markets?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Well, yeah, excited to be here. This is something we've definitely been working on for a number of years with relative success and a lot of failures along the way as well. Definitely, so kind of a little bit of background. We founded the company in early 2010, my brother and I in Boulder, Colorado. Early on, had definitely some interesting experiences as far as dealing with local regulatory and state regulations as Colorado began developing their markets. In 2014, I helped co-found the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp based out of Philadelphia. Did a lot of work on the East Coast as far as building out basically Pennsylvania, Florida, and a couple other markets with primary focus on the Pennsylvania market. So definitely gained a lot of experience as far as working cross coast and looking at the way that different markets not only developed but then also rolled out. Last year, became a founding board member of the Cannabis Trade Federation, and been heavily working in DC with both organizations over the past 6 months, especially. Working on Capitol Hill with a number of different bills and sponsors, and trying to figure out what the best way is to progress this industry forward on a national basis. Denver Packaging Company is our manufacturer and distributor of Keef products in Colorado. It's currently the only vertical one that we own. We have a couple more, I'll get into it, that we're looking at taking from licensing to vertical ownership. As I said, Keef Brands, originally born in Boulder, Colorado, and so we came with the idea about December of 2009. Launched the brands originally in January of 2010. Got quick market penetration. By the end of 2010, we were at about 80% penetration into the Colorado market. It definitely, since then, we originally started with a baseline of products, at the very top there, the soda brands, and moved into some other product lines over the course of the past 9 years. We launched our vape pens and concentrate lines in about 2012-13. Since then, we've expanded them into both relationships with packs and then our own private line of vape pens. Keef Sparkling was our first zero-cal sparkling water. I think the first one in the country. We launched that in 2016 or 17. Keef Life is basically a vitamin water style product, 100 milligram. So we basically vary 10 milligram or 100, depending on the market and the regulations. We'll get more into kind of how that works in a little bit. And then Keef Shots is our first kind of shot into the crossover mocktail, cannabis mocktail type arena, and we launched that this year. So that's primarily in Colorado right now. We're still working on ways to launch them here. It's the Keefarita and Keef Mojito, and so kind of taking the alcohol approach and eliminating the alcohol. So just a quick timeline of all of it. 2015 and 14 really, I'll go back to 2010. So our licensing model, which is currently what we primarily operate under, really got developed out of necessity in 2011. The story behind it, basically, we launched in Boulder, Colorado originally in a pharmaceutical grade manufacturing facility. Beautiful facility, thought we'd be in it forever. We dumped about right under $1 million worth of tenant improvement into it in 2011. Built out a couple hundred light grow. We're on track to build it out. We had about 75 lights in. Clean room technology. We had a triple 20-liter Eden machine running in there, and really thought that we were positioned very well for massive expansion. And then in September of 2011, the city of Denver came out with a rule that basically said if you couldn't get your facility inspected by wholesale food manufacturing inspection service, you could no longer sell into the Denver market. Being that Denver represented about 60 to 70% of our total market in Colorado, we frantically tried to get someone to come and inspect the facility. It was basically a power play by Denver to move jobs to Denver, knowing that they had, based on municipal size and population, they actually had the only wholesale food inspection service in the state within a municipality. All the other cities relied on the FDA. So we could not get anyone from Boulder to come up and look at the facility. They gave us about 60 days to move, so we had to shut down the facility. And basically the only way to keep the brand on the market at that time, we'd spent all of our capital building it out, was to pull all the machinery that wasn't bolted down and find a partner in Denver that we could license the brand to. So we really, out of necessity, were forced to build this licensing model very early on. We then licensed it down to a manufacturing facility in Denver where we operated until about 2014 when we founded the Denver Packaging Company. Basically took that licensing model, and then in 2017, really in 16, we started exporting the licensing model to other markets, beginning with Arizona, and then California quickly after that. California, we licensed with Kiva Confections early on, and looking at the licensing model, some of the things that we looked at right out the gate, especially from a brand standpoint, whether you're launching a flower brand or a beverage brand, they're all pretty much, you're looking for distribution. Kiva being one of the larger distributors and older manufacturers, we thought would be a very good kind of place to start in that market. Originally, we were looking at a cross-licensing deal, similar to what we had done with Bang Chocolate. We had actually brought Bang Chocolate out to Colorado in 2013, which was really kind of one of the first big licensing deals to take a California brand to Colorado. We operated them for about a year and a half while they got kind of up and running, and they decided to move on to build out their own facility down south. So we took that same model, and after we'd gotten our experience in Colorado, went out to California with Kiva. That was their first licensing agreement as well, so it's kind of their first stab at bringing someone in to California. Under the medical rules, it worked pretty well. We got launched and we're in about 400 accounts within about a year and a half. And then the adult use bill passed here. Kiva exploded and kind of started bursting at the seams and couldn't find a new space quick enough for us to expand with them. So we ended up looking for a new partner here in California and relaunched finally this year with CanaCraft out of Santa Rosa. So one of the things there, once again, we were looking for and got the other experience in other markets, Michigan being one where we partnered with the old Miller Coors distributor operators there. So understanding that beverage is definitely, once again, nuances within every product that you may do. Beverage is not the easiest product to distribute compared to vape pens or other smaller units. And one single vape pen is wholesale value, same as about 4 sodas. So when you talk about that type of volume and what it takes from not only just a sheer volume standpoint, but an actual physical volume, beverage can be very difficult. CanaCraft, obviously having launched the Hi-Fi Hops product in conjunction with Lagunitas here, had the infrastructure already in place to successfully take beverages into this market. In addition to that, we found a lot of synergies between the two organizations. My brother and I also co-founded in 2012 a company called IES, Isolate Extraction Systems. My brother still operates that company as the CEO. So in working together between the two companies, it also helped us kind of with the national expansion, being that we sold several hundred machines out into the market. We had a lot of experience working with operators in a number of states, not only from a regulatory standpoint, but also from sheer build out, everything, and understanding those markets. So definitely a lot of crossover between the two and experience that we were able to share with each other. So to continue on, I'll get to this slide a little bit, some pros and cons of licensing, but Nevada has definitely probably been one of our most challenging states from a product and packaging standpoint. There's still a lot of gray area, and it's mostly, they say it's all written, but it's definitely been difficult. The regulators there can kind of make up the rules as they go. So from a packaging standpoint for us, we've been through 2 bottling machines, trying to figure out what they will and won't allow us to package in. 2 different regulators telling us 2 different things, and so that it definitely some interesting dynamics when you are running state to state. Puerto Rico, obviously the farthest one away from a logistical standpoint, hasn't been the easiest. From a market standpoint, it's been a fantastic market for us. Very concentrated population of 2 million people on the island. The regulations are pretty lax right now still. They are developing out the model with adult use more than likely coming within the next 2 years. So we're the first Latin country that I can see that, obviously attached to the United States that will go adult use. Jamaica is moving along. They still do not allow edibles in Jamaica, so we're strictly doing the concentrate products in that market right now. We have hopes by the end of this year, hopefully have our Massachusetts operation up and running and Washington State. The Washington model is definitely one that, from a pros and cons standpoint, is a difficult one. It was one that we wanted to enter into for a long time. In looking at it and understanding the differences, and we'll get to it from the distribution side, there are some issues there with distribution that make Washington a very challenging market for wholesale operators. So once again, going back to the kind of pros and cons, one of the biggest pros of licensing is speed to market. That was looking back at the story from 2011. Had we not been able to develop that, I don't know that the brand would still be alive. It allowed us to get back on the market very quickly without losing a whole lot of accounts. Much lower CapEx when you're talking about building out your own facility, staffing it, everything that goes into that. Like I said, whether it's with flour or anything, it's your much higher CapEx to build out your own facility. And then the biggest one right now, reduced 280 exposure. Most of the licensing models are done properly with your proper tax counsel. You can maneuver around the 280E exposure issues relatively easily, whereas as an operator that's actually touching the flour or touching any of these products, you're going to be subject to 280E tax liabilities, which currently are not fun to deal with. Big cons, obviously low operational control. We've run into that's probably been our biggest issue running state to state, is translating SOPs from one operator to another can be very challenging. So it also, definitely you can look at it both ways. It's a double-edged sword. In having to teach other people the SOPs, you definitely find where all the flaws in your SOPs are. So it's definitely helped us to create a very strong book of operating procedures to be able to help even our own operation back home in Colorado. So said it's definitely the biggest challenge that we've found over the years, replicating that so you get a consistent product across all market. Another one, reduced ability to capture top-line revenue. When you're looking at a licensing model, you're definitely not capturing all of that top line unless you have some type of a co-packing. And then, once again, you're exposed to 280E. So right now, there's definitely some nuances between the two. And that ability to capture top-line revenue for a bunch of MSOs that are public right now is very important. So that's why you see most of the multi-state operators, the large ones, going after actual ownership is to capture that top-line revenue, as the markets currently are rewarding top-line revenue more than profitability or really anything else. The other big con, obviously, supply chain logistics. So Puerto Rico being our most difficult logistical market to get to. Colorado is much easier, but either way, it's not getting out here to California. You're looking at different packaging requirements, different rules around packaging. Applying, it's definitely a challenge. I think for any business, whether you're talking about a cultivation business or not, each market is very different in the way that they handle it. Let's see. So moving to that, and the variances between markets. Obviously, testing is probably the largest one right now that we're running into. Is each state requiring different testing for different pesticides or cannabinoids, terpenes, all of that. So in looking at the packaging requirements, everything that goes into that, and then even beyond that with the testing, looking at your ingredients. So in creating edible products, there's some horror stories out there of people going out buying, supposed organic flavoring. That organic flavoring comes in, you put it in a product, the product goes out for testing, batch testing, and the issue is, if you go into Whole Foods, but 99% of all of the products in the produce section would fail pesticide testing based on almost any state's pesticide testing rules right now. So that same produce is extracted and put into flavoring for food products. So a lot of what you're seeing, the stories starting to trickle out is edible products and concentrates that are using, plant-based, plant-derived flavors failing for pesticides, and it's not coming from the actual cannabis, it's coming from the food-grade additives that are going into the product. So, one of the big issues, obviously, running state to state is certain states don't test for some of them, others do, so it's really can be a challenge when you're looking at multiple different markets and looking to release the same product and keeping that product consistency flowing through. Packaging standpoint, again, that's packaging testing, all of that. Each market is different. Like I said, our biggest horror story is probably in Nevada. We went in thinking, reading the regulations, had our attorney tell us, okay, you're good to go in aluminum can bottles. They're opaque, child-proof, all of that. Single use. They didn't understand apparently, and it was the regulator we dealt with kind of made it up. We still feel. They basically told us, well, it has to be resealable, even though it was a single-use 10-milligram product. The package that we had was a pop top, which was sufficient for childproofing in every other state. Well, it turned out Nevada really didn't care about the childproofing. They had the exit packaging. So we had to switch the bottling machine out for a 12-ounce glass bottle that had a twist-off cap on it. So now it was not child-proof, it was glass, so we had to shrink wrap it to get it to be opaque. Launched it into the market, and then quickly found out that all of the dispensaries on the strip wouldn't carry it because you can't have glass on the strip. So it hasn't been easy, and that's where I went back to the product page. I'm at the top. We've just recently switched over to 12-ounce standard aluminum cans with your cracked top, using, we were able to get the Exto lid child-proofed, and that is a reclosable lid on a 12-ounce two-piece can. So that took us about a year and a half to figure out, small enough bottling line, getting all of it done, but we're about to relaunch onto that market with that product here, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 months. From a marketing standpoint, obviously every state is completely different there. Colorado, you cannot use billboards. California, they're everywhere. In Colorado, you have to prove that 70% of your target market that you're advertising to is above 21. So a lot of digital channels and places like that. It's not that easy to figure out 21 and up. Obviously, you can put digitally an opt-in at 21 and up, but from a magazine standpoint and everything else, you're really relying on these marketers and their word, and they're going to tell you anything to sell you. So not the easiest, and that plays out in every state. And obviously, with regulators looking at the marketing, not wanting to market to kids or anything like that, it's definitely one to keep an eye on. And then B2C distribution, obviously on that level, each state is definitely different. California, you have to have a distribution license, no matter what. All the testing occurs at that distribution level standpoint. Colorado, we may have a distribution license next year, so it's been straight B to B all across the board, and then to the customer. Seed to sale is probably the next biggest, or the biggest regulatory variance, depending on which side of the market that you're in. And then the regulations around that, using Washington, for example, from a batch standpoint, basically in Colorado, I'll use Colorado first, when we manufacture, the product can come off the line. We then have a secondary labeling machine that will slap a batch label onto every single product, which then brings it back on the seed to sale platform to know exactly where it came from each time. And that's done one time, and then it can be shipped out the door. And on the large box or on the large shipment, on our metric, that could be 20 cases or however it may be, but it's all the same label on it. In Washington, every single case and every single unit has to have, right before it's shipped out the door, the dispensary it's going to, all of the batch that it came from, everything. So every single product has to be touched multiple times. So basically, if we were to produce 250 cases on our average batch size would be about that 250 cases times 24 bottles, a number of units. Every one of those would go into storage with no secondary label attached to it. And then as they're picked off the line, they have to be labeled with that batch. So in one unique, one 250 case batch, you could wind up with who knows how many individual labels within it. So whereas Colorado, it's one label on it, it's done the day it's packaged. So a lot of variances like that you want to keep an eye on when looking at markets. The depending on what products that you're looking at. And then finally, social consumption. California, each municipality is different right now. You can't apply for state, basically special use permits currently to allow it. San Francisco, you have a number of dispensaries open right now, like Mo Greens, Barbary Coast, places like that. Harborside's about to launch theirs, hopefully in the next 30 days or so, with full on-site consumption bars. Basically walk in Amsterdam style, consume right there on the spot. Southern California really hasn't licensed that yet. The state's still looking at long-term licensing around that. Colorado, we just passed our social use bill this year. It was vetoed last year by the governor and then passed immediately this year. It allows every single dispensary owner to apply for a secondary on-site consumption permit to be attached to either their current dispensary location via separate entrance or a new location somewhere in the municipality that will allow it. We're very excited for that one, see from a beverage standpoint, and then also flower, the home market, allowing people to have a safe space to consume in on-site, go buy flower, bring it in there, test it. If they like it, they go buy the rest of it. So it's probably the biggest advent that we've had in the last couple of years as far as the actual cannabis market, and I'm super excited to see where that goes. Distribution, kind of getting back to that a little bit, we talked a lot on it, just staying flexible, obviously looking at local regulations. It can be very difficult when you're talking about machinery or manufacturing, but it's something that we've tried to do as much as possible. Central supply chain management, and looking at it, maintaining those vendor relationships, tons of communication. That's probably the most communication we have between our licensees and as a licensor is definitely the communication on the supply chain and maintaining those adequate levels of inventory to make sure you don't never wind up off market. And in order to do that, it's just forecasting, lots and lots of forecasting, and steady communication. So that's about it. Thank you guys. So open up for some questions. So, it's challenging at the start. It usually takes us at least 6 months on market to really get an idea, because you have your market launch, then kind of apply, it'll peak, figure out where the market's going to settle in, and then you can start getting, actual inventory forecasting. But yeah, the first 6 to 9 months in any new market are very challenging.
Thanks, Eric. With the opening edible market in Canada, are you guys looking out there at all?
Yeah. So we've definitely been. My COO is up in Vancouver right now. We've been up there a fair amount. From the extraction side, we've worked with a number of the large organization LPs up there for a couple of years now, and we're definitely excited about the market. So again, if you talk about packaging variances, the new regulations in Canada are very daunting. You're allowed to have branding about that big on a package. They look like they're retail adult use products look like pharmaceutical packaging, basically. So it's going to be an interesting market as it comes on. We are excited about it. It's next to California, the second largest population market currently available for adult use. But yeah, we're definitely excited to get up to Canada. We haven't signed any deals up there yet. So.
With all your strife and struggle with packaging, have you been able to take a step and do an overview of all the states as a whole to get a generalized clean bill of health, if you will?
Yeah, so that
because I've worked in the cigarette industry, and the same thing exists in a lot of cases internationally with that. And what happens is we get, every country's got its own deal, but you also have some universal laws that you can adhere to with your packaging and get around, some of the pitfalls. If you're doing it as a catch as catch can, you're dead.
Yeah, absolutely.
But have you guys developed a universal perspective on it yet?
Yeah, we have, and this is basically where we landed here. The sparkling product is currently in this can. We haven't launched it into the other markets yet, So Colorado, it is compliant, but we are moving everything to these guys up here. And looking at it, since we've had the Exto package approved now for childproofing, it does work for single use. It recloses as well. We can't go over 10 milligrams in it due to the ability. There's no way to really dose it. I wish I could take this cap off up here, but so we had this cap developed. It took us about a little over a year working with drug plastic glass out of Philadelphia to develop that childproof cap. If I could take it off and look at it, inside that cap is a clear dosing cap that's demarked 2.5 and 5 milligrams. So depending on the market, it can be dosed single serve, so we can go up to 100 milligrams in Colorado, California, and those markets. Yeah. So basically, and then the rest of them down here, vape pens vary also state to state. PAX has spent a lot of money on their packaging for cross market. We've tried to stay as flexible as possible in our vapes. We're down to basically pouches on those with the childproof insert inside to keep the packaging costs as low as possible, as that market is the concentrate market. Vape market is in basically everywhere at this point. Just, it's a race to the bottom while trying to maintain as high quality product as possible. So wherever we can shave dollars, we're working on it on that one, and also keep some type of uniformity throughout the line. But yeah, that's been the most difficult. Some consistency, something. But right now, if we were to put all the packaging up, we're still at the point where the website would look pretty scattered. But we are definitely working on this right here to get it all down. We're also going through a rebranding right now, so a rebranding process, and we're hoping to have all the new brand. Everything will get unified there. So we've been working with a group out of Oakland. We interviewed about 6 different branding companies and ended up settling. No, we interviewed 6 to do the rebrand. We've done it all ourselves internally up till now. Yeah. Exactly. So we ended up choosing EVB out of Oakland, which had a lot of experience kind of bringing a number of large beverage brands together. And the one that really sold us with them was Jameson, and the rebrand they did, the work that they did with Jameson, bring them back to market and really introduce an old product and bring new life and flavor to it.